from the cosmic horror. The stars are right once again, and the great old ones are allowing us to talk about for 30 minutes. H.P. Lovecraft, the horror writer, is a genre unto himself. I'm your cosmic host, Mark Griffin, executive of the Lovecraft Estate on Yaga, joined in by two from Material World, David Guffey, a professor at Miss Patonic University, and Richard Wilson, the famed inventor of the steam man of Shaco. As Lovecraft read the works of George Henley, he was also reading Edward S. Ellis. Kentuckians may be interested in him because of his life and times of Daniel Boone, with sketches of Simon Kenton, Louis Wetzel, and other leaders in the settlement of the West. Ellis followed in the veins of James Fenimore Cooper and used Boone as a template for Natty Bumpall in his Leatherstocking Tales. Ellis used real people in his fictional stories, such as Kit Carson, whose parents once lived here in Logan County, and Deerfoot, an American Seneca who gained popularity in England by his ability to outrace anyone. Ellis wrote a series of fictional books on Deerfoot, taking great liberties with his life. Deerfoot is a Shawanoe, as Ellis once described him, whose warriors have consorted with those of the Winnebagos. But Deerfoot has left his lodge beyond the Mississippi and lives alone in the woods. He will not hurt the brave Winnebago, who fights men, but he slays the wolf that bites the children of the pale face that have never harmed him. Deerfoot crossed over into other books by Ellis, such as Ned in the Blockhouse and the Log Cabin series. A character reappearing in an author's work, as well as mixing facts and fiction together, would not be strange to Lovecraft fans, whether it be Cthulhu or Randolph Carter. Not all of Ellis's stories were historical romances. Some of them capitalized on the pioneering sciences of the time. Harvey Hamilton and Bo Humpkus Johnson, the Flying Boys, were two young men who had adventures in the sky. Deerfoot never joined them for any. Deerfoot never made a cameo in Ellis's better-known work, Huge Hunter or the Steam Man of the Prairies. This story is regarded as the first of the U.S. science fiction dime novels. It has been classified as a type of science fiction called Ellisonade, named in the honor of Thomas Edison. These stories usually involved a boy inventor or Thomas Edison inventing something, usually a robot, though in one adventure, Edison found himself on Mars. His real-life rival, Nikola Tesla, also had his own Martian adventure. The original Tom Swift even lumped into Edisonade. In The Steam Men of the Prairies, the story is about a boy and a steam-powered mechanical man. Lovecraft probably gravitated toward this dime novel more than the others by Ellis. Louis P. Cinera, writing under the pseudonym of No Name, swiped the story from Frank Reed and the Steam Men of the Plains, not to be confused with Steam Men of the Prairies. Their covers are even similar. A steampunk robot is pulling a wagon full of people. Both have black smoke blowing out of their literal stovepipe hats. The only major differences are the looks of the wagons and that the original Steam Man is pudgy, like a fat cat politician of the time. Using the alias of No Name must have kept Cinera from being sued. And so began the first of the Frank Reed series. Cinera involved three generations of the Reed family and their adventures in airships, electric stagecoaches, and even electric helicopters. Once they took on the James Gang, maybe after they robbed the bank in Russellville. Cinera's had been called the American Jules Verne, and also been called the father of steampunk. Lovecraft never mentioned any of Cinera's dime novels. In fact, he once wished he had read his Electric Horse story. Jules Verne himself is claimed to have been inspired by the Frank Reed series when he created his mechanical elephant for his tale Steamhouse. Cinera's must not have minded because Verne was more creative with his steam machine and the fact that he swiped the idea from Ellis in the first place, who probably should be called the true father of steampunk. The original Steam Man of the Prairies has popped in a few modern comics, such as Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and Nemo Heart of Ice, as well as Warren Ellis's Planetaria. I'm guessing the two Ellises are not related. Frank Reed Jr. also shows up in Nemo Heart of Ice. His mechanical man inspired the husband and wife Paul Goulian and Anana Bennett to create Boilerplate, a steam-powered robot that fought in several wars in the past. He was thought to have been lost during World War I until he was found again recently. While Lovecraft's fiction would not be classified as steampunk, he tried to ground his cosmic horror in reality and was no admirer of the Victorian era, which is the setting for most steampunk tales. His themes have been fused into the genre. Steampunk Cthulhu, Mythos, Terror, and the Age of Steam is a collection of tales and stories, which is also referred to as Victorian-era apocalypses. A reviewer on Amazon, Seven Kitties, posted a little more steampunk than horror. Some of the Mythos stuff is pretty cut and dry pastiche, but it's a fun read with a broad selection of stories, and all the stories are good quality, unlike what I could say for many, many other Mythos compilations. None of the authors' names stood out in the compilation, but one title did catch my eye: The Reverend Mr. Goodworks and the Yeggs of Yig by Edward M. Elderlack. Neil Gaiman's Studying Emerald is also lumped into this genre by some, though I don't see it. I've not read the story, but I've gathered from the summaries that it's a traditional Sherlock Holmes attempting to solve a mystery, except it involves Cthulhu mythos, and no steampunk technology shows up. Have you all read that, David or Richard?
Yeah, I read Study in Emerald. Yeah, there's not really a lot of like steampunk technology, gizmos or gadgets or anything along those lines. It's very much kind of, the kind of like what you described there, as far as they introduced a lot of Cthulhu mythos elements into the Holmes Sherlock Holmes story.
That's what I kind of gathered.
Sort of twisted Holmes on his head.
Mm-hmm.
Holmes was defending the Cthulhu mythos characters instead of trying to track them down.
Yeah. They're kind of the place of like they're the royal family, essentially, the royals that are being they're being attacked by other people, and he's kind of like the servant of the crown. In this case, Cthulhu's the one wearing the crown.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Have you? I thought you had read that. Have you not?
No, I hadn't read that one. I've
had short.
Do any of y'all have that one?
I've got the graphic.
I have it somewhere.
Yeah, I've got the graphic novel, the one that's somewhere or another. I'll track it down.
They've also made it into a game, so it's a definitely very popular story by Neil Gaiman. And our Lovecraftian word of the month is denizen, D-E-N-I-Z-E-N.
Are we supposed to define that?
Yeah. What does it mean?
Like a citizen of, like, say you're a denizen of the deep, means that's where you reside. As far as that's concerned.
Dweller, citizen. I can go with that.
Citizen wouldn't be exactly the right word for it. It'd be like an inhabitant or an occupant for a particular place. Yeah. It's like a foreigner allowed certain rights in an adopted country. It shows up in the case of Charles Dexter Ward and one of his lesser known works, The Trap. One of the earliest uses we find Lovecraft using denizen is in May of 1917. It appears in his Department of Criticism column, where he criticized a fellow amateur journalist for misusing the word. He used it to mean like habitat instead of inhabitant. And so he was very chastising that person. Denizen was a word I used a lot in my early writings. When I worked for a local newspaper, I was sneaking into stories that I wrote. Usually the ones that were like about the forgotten communities of the county. A few people would object, but if it's never enough for the editor to make me stop. I looked up the word in some of the older issues of the newspaper, and we're talking about like the late 1800s. And it's usually associated with the undesirable members of the community, like the drunks and the bootleggers. So it was one of my favorite words.
Okay, it's meant to be, I guess, an inhabitant, but a negative connotation as far as maybe an unwelcome inhabitant. Okay.
I've seen it usually kind of like associated like with animals, like if animals are denizens of the forest or something like that.
Yeah, I've seen that with sea life as well. Again, they talk about like a denizen of the deep waters and that type of thing.
That's what I was going to say, the denizen of the deep.
Yep.
Yeah, it gets them thrown in a lot. And our elder god of the month is Yog-Sothoth. So what do y'all know about him?
One of the bigger deals as far as the Cthulhu mythos is concerned, because he's one of the he spawns Cthulhu, if I'm remembering correctly, in addition to the other the entities in the Dunwich Horror and some other elder gods here and there. I like to say, some of his various nicknames are, I like the Lurker at the Threshold, as far as it's all the various aliases that and nicknames and that the Cthulhu elder gods got.
Wasn't he also like the opener of the way, sort of the in between this world and
He's both the key and the gate.
So. Right, that's it. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
According to Lovecraft's family tree, he is actually Cthulhu's grandfather.
Okay, so I was off by it.
Yeah, he's described as a mass of glowing orbs, sometimes of eyes and tendrils. It is heavily implied, if not outright stated, that Yog-Sothoth is omniscient, according to a fandom site, and is locked outside the universe, meaning he knows and sees all space and time at once. which means there's no secret hidden from Yog-Shoggoth. So he knows where you left your car keys.
Oh,
He's first mentioned in the case of Charles Dexter Ward. In the Dunwich Horror, he's important to the plot because he fathers the twin children with the human Wilbert Watley and the unnamed brother, aka the Dunwich Horror. So that makes them Cthulhu's uncles. That must make family reunions really odd.
yeah.
Yeah. Twisted family tree.
Yeah. Randolph Carter encountered him in Through the Gates of Silver Key and did not go insane. And he also shows him in Horror in the Museum, and also in August Derleth's, as you mentioned, Lurker in the Threshold, the so-called post-humorous collaboration with our man of the half hour. The Necronomicon Files believes Lovecraft was inspired by the spears of the Cyphroth, a type of chart used to represent the evil and impure spiritual forces of Jewish mysticism. This view is not shared elsewhere. And according to popular legend, Lovecraft wanted his shared universe of his cosmic horror to be called Yog-Shofrey instead of Cthulhu Mythos. That statement does need some clarification. In a letter to Derleth, he wrote that it would not be a bad idea to call this Cthulhuism and Yog-Shofrey, but it wasn't something he was setting in concrete as an edict, and he wasn't sharing his view with others. There's no record of Cthulhuism and Yog-Shofrey catching on and being used by anyone else. So that's all we have on Yog-Shofrey.
Does he get name dropped in Lovecraft country? I was trying to remember as far as amongst all the various influences that come up there. I don't remember if his name gets.
Do they say the name when they're chanting?
I think so. At minimum,
rituals.
Yeah.
Maybe the ritual that they do in the mansion, and everyone, spoiler, all the guys get turned to dust.
May have. I can't remember too much of. I don't remember it being mentioned, but it doesn't mean it wasn't.
It's hard to remember. Yeah.
Yeah. And jumping a little bit subjects. Have y'all heard about deep nostalgia?
Is that underwater?
It's actually
ennui, or what is that?
it's an app from a genealogy website called MyHeritage. And it allows you to upload photos of your ancestors, and render the face of your ancestor, like animate them to realistic points to where like they turn, blink, and even smile.
Right. Yeah.
And so I experimented with it using a photo of Lovecraft, and I was really impressed by the effect of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave him a small closed mouth smile that I felt I was actually witnessing the reanimation of the horror writer. And if the great old ones permit, a link of it is going to be on our Anchor page, anchor.fm/LCPL. So you can check it out if the gods permit.
Show notes. We'll call them show notes.
Show notes.
Yeah.
Yes. And because of the bad weather last month, we were unable to talk about Miss Matonic number 4. So Richard, what'd you think of it?
Speaking of Yog-Shoggoth and Dunwich Horror, that kind of looms real big in that particular issue of it, because he gets very overtly mentioned in there, and then they circle back to they can do a lot of stuff about the Dunwich Horror in there. I think it's kind of the same issues or the same pacing issues that the previous ones had, where they're kind of throwing a lot of stuff at the author's kind of throwing a lot of stuff at the wall in terms of a spot this reference, racing towards a final issue, as opposed to if you knew you only had, say, 5 issues, and then take a certain Lovecraft influences or stories and work those into your story, not try to do all of them at the same time.
Yeah, I can't get a sense whether the writer Mark Sable felt he didn't have good enough an idea for a Lovecraftian mystery, so he just threw in other stuff, or whether he just thought that maybe his only chance to write anything in the Arkham cycles, so he just threw in everything, to take.
Right. Exactly. His big Lovecraft outing, and as a result, he wanted to work as many things in as he could, which kind of then makes it's very again hard to focus on any one thing, because they're immediately moving to the next encounter or the next cameo appearance by someone, and so on and so on. As opposed to if you took, say, the Dunwich Horror, which you get a whole lot of those elements in this issue, and then there was it The Thing on the Doorstep is another one. He seems to be utilizing a lot of the characters from that. You kind of had just taken those 2 things and said, let me do a more of a cohesive story with these, introducing elements from these two stories versus, and here's Herbert West, and then reference to the rats in the wall, and so on every few pages.
Yeah, that I think that really jumped the shark for me when they made a remark about like there's rats in the walls.
Yeah. And then they just move on from it completely as far as what was that last night? I think there are rats in the walls.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I thought that was I thought it was a bit much. It seemed like it was really all over the place because it just seemed like it was just going to be kind of like, almost like a new version of Thing on the Doorstep.
Right. I think it's as far as the different things that he's introducing in there, because you're talking about the Klan members are the ones who are using the Necronomicon, and then you've got the FBI element. So there's aspects of it he could have brought into it in the way that Lovecraft Country did, where they kind of did something new. But I think as far as in these later issues, it really isn't happening. It's just a kind of a Easter egg game of, spot the reference to this story and that story. And
yeah, it's almost like a Where's Waldo type of thing.
Right. Yeah. And I guess that's when you've only got, again, a certain amount of, whether it be a 5-episode miniseries or 5-issue, comic book miniseries, you've got to pick your battles in terms of what you want to include, as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, but I wish he just picked one story and just focused on it, or two stories. He could have easily
one or two elements and use them to make a more cohesively paced story.
Yeah, I think that would have been a lot better. And speaking of Lovecraft Country, it's now out on DVD. I mean, it's available for the masses now. So I guess we can talk about it again. What are your favorite parts of Lovecraft Country?
Let's see. I do like, as far as the first episode, they do kind of, I think, as far as they introduced the Lovecraftian monsters a little bit early, but as a result of like having read the book, I wasn't expecting them to be in there so early. So I do kind of like that part at the beginning of the book where they're encountering the police, out in the woods and all that type of thing before they find the, just because I think that's one change, I guess, as far as when you've read a book beforehand, then going into it, you kind of know what you're getting into. So when they introduce something new, then they're like, oh, okay. I was kind of, legitimately surprised when they jumped out, that quickly as far as that's concerned.
And you, David?
I enjoyed in both the book and the movie, but or the TV show, the villain is not necessarily who or what you think they are. There's some more of that gender swapping stuff going on. But the ending, as far as how they deal with the final threat, is very similar. And I like that it kept that with the book. You did get a big cultish finale with the whole, we're going to sacrifice somebody and yada yada yada. So it was fun. I thought it was a really fun show. There were a couple of episodes that were really interesting. The one where oh gosh, now I can't think of her name. The lady goes to the alternate dimension.
Yes. Hippolaya.
Yeah, Hippolaya. I really liked the book version of that better than I liked the TV version, but I guess they only had so much to work with. I enjoyed it overall.
And some of my favorites was the one about the haunted house, and where Letty's sister learns how to become a white woman.
Yeah.
The Indiana Jones-esque adventure underneath the Boston Museum. It was a little bit pat, but I just kind of enjoyed just watching that type of adventure again.
Yeah.
I did like, talking about Hippolaya's time traveling. I thought it was interesting that when she became an Amazon, she was fighting against Confederate soldiers. And I would like to know they need to go back to that story again, because I'd like to know the backstory about how that came to be. And Topsy Bopsy are two creatures I'm never going to forget for a long time.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, that's what I forgot, was that those two, I think they did a really good job as far as kind of that kind of, the Girl from the Ring-ish horror of, like the creepy children. Those were really well done.
Yeah, that's not in the book, is it? It is a really creepy.
It's not in the book, as far as not in that manner, as far as the way that they approached it there.
Yeah.
It is creepy.
What about Jaha, the Kumaho, or the nine-tailed fox spirit?
That was really interesting too.
Yeah.
I enjoyed those bits.
She's not in the book, isn't she?
No,
not that I know of.
No, she's not, because that's the thing I kept trying to wonder. Like, did I forget?
Yeah.
This entire. You had to go back.
I get the impression that is it Atticus? Is that his name? He hadn't had any in the book. He hadn't had any supernatural adventures prior to what started up here. So, but I guess they gave him more backstory that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't like her too much. I just thought she was too much of an add-on, and I didn't feel like she really fitted that well into this show. And it was something about her foxtails, kind of her eyes, that just kind of like really like off-put me. It seemed like a really odd way to have her tails come out of her. It was like,
And it worked. See, they're trying to make you feel uncomfortable.
I guess so. I guess that worked. And
it drove you insane.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You couldn't comprehend it. It was so hard.
That's right. That's what happened. They're mean for me to go insane over seeing that. And I didn't realize that the same actress who played her also played Deja Torres in the opening dream sequence in the first season.
Oh, okay. In the first episode. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I did not realize that. And that dream kind of makes more sense now. And another thing I thought was interesting when they recreated the Tulsa massacre, that's probably the first time, except for Watchmen, where they've kind of recreated the events of that happening.
Yeah.
So it's
it's interesting that both of them would vote, would do that, coming out so close to each other, as far as they would both end up, addressing that.
Yeah, I know. In Watchmen, they did that. They wanted that to be almost like kind of like a Superman-esque origin story. The destruction of a society. And someone escaping from it, and doing that. And Christina Brandwhite, the blonde villainess, I didn't really see her as much as being a really evil, even though she did sacrifice Atticus on the altar. I saw her as kind of like more misguided than anything, because she did a lot more to help the group than she did harm them.
Right.
Yeah, where she's still selfish in terms of her own motivations, but she wasn't, as far as, if you're talking about the tiers of evil involved in various characters there, then she wasn't on the top level of that pyramid.
Yeah, and did y'all catch the one big goof in Lovecraft Country?
Apparently not.
No, I guess no.
It has to do with Hiram Wintromp's observatory. It's first is set in Mayfield, Kansas, and then it's in Mayfield, Kentucky.
Huh. Okay.
And, Misha Green, the showrunner on Twitter, admitted on Twitter to the Era, saying she didn't realize Hippolyta had been looking at a map of Kansas when heading towards there.
Okay.
And that would explain a lot better how Atticus was able to reach the observatory so quickly from St. Louis. Mayfield, Kentucky is a little bit closer, a 3-hour trip, as opposed to Mayfield, Kansas, which would be about 7 hours. But the mystery still remains how Atticus got there so quickly, since he doesn't own a car, and doubtfully a bus would not drop him off at the remote observatory. Yeah. Personally, if I was Misha Green, I would not have blamed it on production error, and I would instead have explained that it was like the space-time portal had been opened and reality had been warped, and the observatory had been moved geographically. As Newsfish on Reddit explained, something multiverse machine. That could even be used to explain how Atticus reached the observatory so quickly that somehow a portal opened while he was in St. Louis, which allowed him to jump to Mayfield, Kansas. But it always struck me something odd about Atticus. There seemed to be something more going on with him. It may have something to do with that Brad White bloodline, because you ever notice when he's in danger, a Shoggoth unexpectedly shows up to protect him.
Yeah, I guess that's true. As far as he seems to, something shows up to pull him out of danger.
Yeah, there's always seems to be that thing that's coming to him. And let's not forget that his cousin Diana made one into a pet.
Yeah, see, that's another thing. As far as that, I don't believe that they're planning on a second, writing a second book, like Lovecraft Country. This is the novel part one of a series, whereas the TV show very much, seems like they're chomping at the bit, for a season 2, and with that particular ending.
Yeah, they definitely set up some plot strands to continue on with.
Mm-hmm. And it would be the first time that's happened, as far as, again, Man in the High Castle was very similar in terms of they, outpaced what they had from the book, in the first season or 2, and then just did their own thing for the rest of the series.
Yeah. Misha Green was interviewed on Fresh Air yesterday, and she was, she won't comment whether it be a second season or not, but they asked a kind of a runaround question saying, like, if there would be a second season of Lovecraft Country, what would it be about?
What would it be about?
And she answered that, the title would be Lovecraft Country Supremacy. And that was her answer. So,
Mhm. Okay.
And I was curious about where Lovecraft's Country's author, Matt Ruff, had come with the idea of the family name of Brad White.
Mhm.
I was wondering if it came from William Stanley Brad Waite.
He disappearing.
Yeah. We got Princess Cthulhu here.
We do.
Oh,
We
wait,
do.
no, she wants to be called something else today. What is that?
Monster. Me, monster, and a zombie.
A zombie.
Monster and a zombie. Well, it's good seeing you around. All right. Anyway, but I was wondering if the name came from William Stanley Brathwaite. He was an African-American poet and literary critic. And why I think this is because he was romantically involved with Winifred V. Jackson. And she was part of Lovecraft's circle of friends. And there were rumors that they were romantically involved as well.
Excellent.
So it's like this weird meshing of the Harlem Renaissance with weird fiction. I tried contacting Ruff, but he never responded back. So the first season had a few more bluegrass references. I mentioned in the earlier podcast that Atticus was seen leaving Kentucky, giving it a bird, only to have to come back to it. A red truck shows up with a sign saying McLean Farm from Groverton, Kentucky. Since Groverton's not a real town, I figured it might be a place someone would visit in a later episode, but they never did.
Was it a reference to something particular as far as, yeah, off the top of my head, doesn't mean anything to me as far as for Lovecraft mythos or anything like that?
Yeah, I've not come across any Grovers or anything like that. And as far as I know, it wasn't in the book, Grovertown, Kentucky. And there was one other Kentucky reference. There was a scene where viewers see a people waiting in line for a bus. It was based on a 1937 photograph of the flood victims in Louisville, Kentucky. It was taken by Margaret Burks White for Life magazine. The photo shows Black Americans lining up outside a relief agency after the disaster. The same billboard of the White family enjoying a ride in a car appears in the waiting lines as well.
Okay.
Yes. So I can always point out the Kentucky references, for my own delight. And Sam, our most dedicated listener and our unofficial fourth member of the podcast, was curious about a movie called Thing on the Doorstep, which can be viewed on Hoopla. It's based on a Lovecraft story, but Sam is reluctant to watch it because it might be terrible. And as a public service to our fans, I watched Thing on the Doorstep, so he doesn't have to.
Took one for the team.
Yes, it's the least I can do. Thing on the Doorstep is a 2014 movie directed by Tom Gleiserman. This is his only feature film. His filmography only lists 2 other shorts. One of them is Rag Dolly in the USSR, which is about a successful Moscow production of a Broadway musical of Raggedy Ann back in the 1880s. And you can watch it on YouTube if you want. Mary Jane Hansen wrote the screenplay, but she also did the makeup and the hair, and she starred as Azarnath Waite. She had many jobs in this one. Sadly, Thing on the Doorstep is not good enough to be called a masterpiece, and it's not bad enough to be called a midnight movie. It starts off promising because of the low-budget special effects, give it kind of a cool atmospheric feel, but unfortunately passes away soon. The movie is fairly faithful to the short story. The characters are fleshed out, such as Daniel Upton's wife. There isn't much to complain about. The actors know their craft. The story holds up. The film crew know how to use their equipment. The only problem is that it's a lifeless movie. You only grow bored watching it. There's not much really to keep you gravitated. I held out hoping to see how the Thing on the Doorstep would be portrayed. If it looked good, then the movie could be redeemed. In the past, the thing of the title is illustrated like a fish-like creature wearing a suit and a hat, like a typical Innsmouthian. Lovecraft described it as a loquacious horror wearing one of Edward's overcoats, its bottoms almost touching the ground, its sleeves rolled back, yet still covering the hands. On the head was a slouch hat pulled low, while a black silk muffler concealed the face. Instead, we got a rotting corpse dressed in a black hooded robe. While it could be called a disturbing face, it was a very generic looking one as decaying faces go. So overall, it was a very disappointing movie.
Yeah, as they see in that middle ground of not good enough to be genuinely enjoyed, but not bad enough to hurl zingers at for the for the duration.
it's just not one of those movies you get a bunch of friends over and like, just like, absolutely rip up on, so, or it's not one of those movies where it's like you had to be quiet. So you had to like listen to it to understand what is all being said. It just didn't have that impact. So, so as a public service, I don't recommend watching The Thing on the Doorstep.
You said it's pretty recent. It came out, what is it, 2014, you say?
Yeah, 2014.
Okay.
They're kind of like a rash of kind of like low budget of Lovecraft movies that popped up. And they're all of various quality. Probably the best one I've seen would be The Call of Cthulhu, which was done as like a black and white silent film. And I really enjoyed that one.
I'll be looking forward to talking Lovecraftian movies as far as because Richard Stanley, who done Color Out of Space pretty recently, was wanting to do more of a kind of a Cthulhu or a Lovecraftian trilogy, but I haven't ever heard anything about whether that movie did well enough to let him proceed with that plan or not.
I haven't really heard. I know he's gotten a little bit in trouble. There's like he's gotten caught up in the Me Too movement as well.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, he's been accused of abusing a partner or something like that.
Yeah. So you never know how those things are going to turn out.
We'll have to get back to petitioning Guillermo del Toro to do the Mountains of Madness, which is the.
See if we can get that. And David,
I already got Best Picture for Dagon. I mean, what do you want to?
Yeah.
Why can they not go ahead and do it?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, David, I understand you have your own public service announcement with Dunwich Horror, the 2008 version.
Oh yeah. It's not terrible, but it's not that great either. You get to see Dean Stockwell, and I think he's really the only recognizable person in it. But the special effects
are the original version.
Right. He was also in the original, and he. I don't know. I didn't prepare to say a whole lot about it, but it was not bad. It's as far as a Cthulhu movie goes. I mean, it's probably above the average because most of them are just really poor attempts at things. But I kind of enjoyed it. I'd recommend it. I don't. It was a Hoopla or Canopy, one or the other has it. You watch it free.
I think Hoopla has it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that was because I remember seeing that on Hoopla because it led me to my rabbit hole of like finding the other movies the director had done. The director doesn't necessarily have some of the best films on his resume. He's like done things, low budget knockoffs like Transmorphers, The Penny Dreadful Picture Show Reanimated, The Pirate, the Witch, and the Weirdo. So that's I did see, it was interesting that Jeffrey Combs is in the Dunwich Horror movie of 2008.
Okay. Is he, who does he play?
Is he Wilbur? Or is he the uncle?
I think he's Wilbur.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember. I didn't write down his credits in here. I just mentioned that he was in it. And of course, he's done a lot of Lovecraft pictures. But usually, if you think of one actor who's been in Lovecraft movies, he's the first person I think of because he's probably done more than anyone else. And all that stuff. And we still got a little time left. Anybody want to say anything else before we head off?
I did watch Godzilla versus Kong today, and I'm wondering where they're going to go with sequels to that and what other monsters or kaiju could show up and have a. So, I mean, why not Cthulhu?
Yeah, about to say exactly in terms of, if they're adding a third person, if make it a triple threat match in terms of into that mix.
Yeah, that just seems like there needs to be like, someday that needs to happen, having like Godzilla versus Cthulhu.
They've already got underwater cities, and in this movie they have a hollow earth thing going on, so that's pretty cool. I don't know. It could be interesting.
There you go. Anyway, sounds like the Princess Cthulhu is saying things to be wrapped up. So, Dave and Richard, I see the stars are no longer right. We must cease all discussion till they align again next month. 30 Minutes of H.P. Lovecraft is sponsored by the Robot War of 2021. Find out who is the king of steam. the Steam Men of the Prairies or the Steam Men of the Plains. This podcast was created in association with the LovecraftPod.com and the Logan County Speculative Fiction Group, with the help of the Logan County Public Library, the Lovecraft Eternal Facebook page, the HP Lovecraft Literary Podcast, and the Great Old Ones. Special thanks to Katie Tyson for her technomancy and Joshua Dukes for his jiggery. And you can listen to past episodes at anchor.fm/LCPL. Until you meet again, may you avoid the wrath of Princess Cthulhu, who is on a play date with Deerfoot and the Flying Boys.